Hello everyone, welcome to Ortho Barista, a relaxed time to learn about orthodontics over a cup of coffee. I'm Senior Dr. G. Kyung.
And I'm Junior Dr. Lee Jungkook from Ortho Barista.
Before we dive into today's session of Easy Orthodontics, let's start with something special. 1, 2, 3.
커피 한잔 할래요?
Perfect harmony, wasn't it?
커피 한잔 이 노래 아닌가요?
Should I sing it again?
커피 한잔 할래요? 커피 한잔 할래요?
All right, now, the dessert we'll be introducing today is none other than ta-da! Oh wow, it's twisted donuts.
The colors are so beautiful.
Twisted donuts have been evolving in all kinds of ways to match today's trends.
I mean, who knew they could look like this?
This is my first time seeing it too. Twisted donuts, also known as kwabegi, are a type of fried bread made from flour or glutinous rice flour. They actually originated in China. In Chinese, they're called youtiao. And the story behind it is quite fascinating. Back in the Song dynasty, there was a loyal general named Yu Fei, but a corrupt official named Qin Hui framed him and caused his death. So, to express their anger, the people started imagining the dough as Qin Hui, shaping it like a person, twisting the body, and throwing it into hot oil.
What a story, right? I can't believe that twisted donut could have such deep history.
Anyway, these all look delicious.
This one looks a caramel donut. It's almost better than Suwon-style beef ribs or whole roasted chicken.
Well, that's just my personal taste.
Wow, this one has a rainbow flavor.
What do you think about rainbow flavor? You're eating too much. Are you okay? Let's get started with today's lecture.
By the way, it's not just about the taste. As orthodontists, don't you think we should know everything about these twisted donuts?
Why?
Well, have you ever heard of triplex wire? You know the fixed wire and wire ring? Anyway, everyone, grab a sweet twisted donut to enjoy as we dive into today's topic. The topic of today's lecture, setting up your orthodontic clinic, seems like something that should have come first in the Ortho Barista sessions. Thanks to the overwhelming support from our fellow dentists, we've prepared today's session on setting up your orthodontic clinic.
Some of you even asked about this before.
Yes, that is right.
There were questions about how to properly set up an orthodontic clinic. At the time, I replied, I'll share this with you someday. And well, today is that day.
To be honest, most of you already know the answers. But think of this session as a way to organize and review the things that you're already familiar with. Dr. Jungkook, would you say there are any elements that make an orthodontic clinic setup different from a general dental clinic?
Well, I think the basics are mostly similar. But if I had to point out something specific to orthodontics, it's probably the fact that we take a lot of photos, both intraoral and extraoral. That's probably one of the biggest differences. When it comes to instruments, we tend to have a lot more orthodontic pliers. So, when it comes to sterilization and maintenance, I think there might be some differences as well.
Certain tools and equipment require specialized sterilization methods. That's why today, we'll be covering the overall vibe of the clinic, sterilization procedures, and the setup for patient consultations and diagnostic preparations. We'll explore these topics with some photos to keep it light and easy. Feel free to enjoy this session during your lunch break. Shall we take a look around?
Yes, Let's do that.
Hello, and welcome to Seoul May Orthodontic Clinic. Today, I'll give you a tour of my clinic, showing you around here and there. Let's get started. This is the waiting room. We've tried our best to create a warm and homey atmosphere here.
Is this a clinic, right?
This is so embarrassing.
Honestly, I've never even visited your clinic before.
Really? That's harsh. Bring some twisted donuts when you come.
But I was worried if I brought overly twisted ones, it might mess things up, like your treatments or even your day.
No worries. Let's move on to the treatment rooms. This area is where we treat orthodontic patients. For orthodontic patients, we've noticed that they often like to see how others are getting treated while they're undergoing their own procedures. So, we've lowered the partitions here. That way, it's not completely blocked off, and with just a slight turn of their head, they can see the other treatment areas. This is the main treatment room, but we've also set up a specialized consultation room here because, well, you need at least one. And over here, we've created a space for what we typically call TBI. This area is designed for patients to brush their teeth. We placed it right in the center for easy access. This is the orthodontic consultation room, where we guide new patients through their initial orthodontic assessment. Here, I provide a detailed explanation about the overall orthodontic process. Once a patient decides to proceed with treatment, we've designed the workflow to be as convenient as possible. In this space, we've arranged everything to happen efficiently: scanning, orthodontic diagnostic photography, and X-rays, all in one area.
That's a really great tip. Honestly, at our clinic, the workflow isn't as streamlined as this.
But it's clear that we need to consider optimizing a smooth treatment flow.
This is an excellent layout for efficiency.
For orthodontists, photography is incredibly crucial. We've installed background lighting in the back to prevent shadows from forming at the top. We've also added subtle lighting overhead. I want to share a special tip unique to our clinic. We take a lot of 45-degree and 90-degree photos, as you know. To make it a bit more engaging for patients, we've added visual markers. We can simply say, "Please look at this 45-degree marker for guidance." So, we guide patients by saying, "Look at the 45-degree marker," or "Look at the 90-degree marker."
One of the most common questions from other doctors is, how should we take facial photos properly? For clinics without a dedicated setup, many just take pictures against a plain wall. Others install blinds and lower them as a backdrop. But the biggest issue with facial photography is the shadows in the background. That's where backlighting helps eliminate those shadows. I actually tried installing backlighting myself, but at first, the light was too strong, creating a backlit effect. I layered about 3 sheets of white material over it. Getting right balance wasn't as easy as I expected. So instead, it ended up being too backlit. But I have to say, marking the 45-degree and 90-degree positions like that is a really great tip. And these little icons, are they supposed to be fingers?
Oh, they are fingers.
Who drew these?
Our office manager did.
I'm definitely taking this great tip with me.
Now, moving on, let's talk about the dental cabinet in the treatment room. I'll explain how we've organized our orthodontic instruments and materials. Now, if you take a look here, you'll see that sterilized basic instruments are neatly set up. We also have gauze and alcohol swabs ready, and for ligating wires in traditional bracket orthodontics, we have prepared ligature wires here. Each treatment chair is stocked with its own set of sterilized basic instruments. You're probably familiar with these already. Here, we have a scaler and a band pusher, which are used when working with ligature wires. And this is for self-ligating brackets, like Majesty or Clippy C. This tool is specifically used for attaching and detaching clips. And now I feel a bit awkward saying this myself, but the sterilization sticker. The sterilization sticker is used to indicate that the instruments have been properly sterilized. We actually prepare these stickers in-house, so patients can see that everything has been thoroughly sanitized. Then, let's open the first drawer. This is power chain used for closing spaces between teeth. Now, some of you may not have seen this before. This is called plastic tubing. Instead of bonding brackets on every tooth, we sometimes leave 1 or 2 teeth without brackets and use this tubing as a placeholder by cutting it to fit the space. We also have open coil springs for creating space, closed coil springs, O-rings, and separation rings. And finally, as Dr. Kyung mentioned earlier, here's the kangaroo wire, though it's not commonly sold these days. I use these when making loops. And we have the nickel titanium wires specialized for MT brackets. In this first drawer, we've organized the most frequently used items, the ones we need almost every time a patient comes in.
Then you can say that you tend to use power chains or closed coil springs often.
Not as much these days. Instead of closed coil springs, I usually use plastic tubing. But when I do use closed coil springs, it's often in combination with nickel titanium closed coils, using them as an alternative to power chains for pulling forces.
For me, I think power chains are still what I use the most. How many types of power chains do you use?
I just stick to one, the medium size.
I actually use 2 types. One of them is extra light. You can always apply a light force, but sometimes it still feels a bit too strong. That's when I prefer using the extra light power chain, especially when retracting canines, since it helps prevent excessive tipping. So, I use both, and I've found them to be really effective.
Alright, let's move on to the second drawer. Here, we've got professional fluoride application kits, since we treat a lot of kids and orthodontic patients. These are all single-use. And here, we have various bonding materials. I actually introduced some of these last time, like Connect Flow, which is really useful when bonding fixed wires. Now, let's move on to the third drawer. In this drawer, we have gloves and waterproof drapes. And if you look here, for safety, I also have protective covers stored here. Lastly, in this section, we've stocked up on facial masks and saliva cups for our pediatric patients. So, we've taken a look at the assistant tools and instruments for each treatment chair. Now, I'd like to introduce useful materials that might serve as handy tips for you. Since we treat a lot of partial orthodontic cases, we have wires organized by size here. This is a small, but practical tip for conserving materials.
These pre-cut wires aren't specifically prepared for partial orthodontic cases.
Instead, they're simply leftover pieces from cases where we only needed to bond the anterior teeth. We keep them for later use.
Very resourceful idea. They are just awkward leftover piece.
But honestly, explaining it makes me feel a bit stingy.
But I know that it feels like a waste to throw them away, right? Especially TMA wires. It is because they're expensive. Seeing how you've stored them, I can tell this is the kind of practical tip that only comes from 20 years of experience.
It's a little embarrassing to admit.
I see that nickel titanium wires are in great accessibility to all sizes. That's really nice.
Now, moving on to various accessories, we've actually shown a few of these on our broadcast before. This is called a rotation wedge, which helps make tooth rotation movements more flexible. Aside from that, we have lingual buttons stored separately. Since they're not used very frequently, it's helpful to keep them organized like this. And, in both traditional orthodontics and clear aligner treatments, we often perform IPR stripping. We've stocked strippers in various sizes. One interesting tool here is the gauge, which allows us to measure exactly how much stripping has been done. Having tools like these can be really helpful. So far, we've gone through the clinic setup, how each treatment room is organized, and how the assistant tools and instruments are arranged in each area. Next is our dental orthodontic lab, though it's a small one. Prosthetic lab is much more complex and requires a lot more setup. But since our next session is about clear aligners, we'll take a quick look at the lab from a clear aligner perspective.
I'm not sure who that is with their back turned. But he seems to be working really hard. I see a dust collector as well. What are you working on right now?
Oh, this is a manual setup. For simple clear aligner cases, I actually do the setup manually myself.
You're cutting everything by hand. And you've got some great equipment. Is that a mini star?
Yes, these elegant hands belong to our manager.
What's that over there?
This reminds me of those old teeth whitening machines. It's nothing too special, but some people insist that you have to use a specific wafer for it. Honestly, they all work fine.
The second count appears on the machine.
And we just trim it down.
For simple or urgent cases, this method works perfectly. Sometimes, it's hard to outsource to a lab, but if we can produce it right on the spot, it's more convenient for both the patient and the clinic, especially when some extra alignment is needed.
So today, we've taken a look at how to set up the clinic and lab in an orthodontic practice. So, throughout the session, Dr. Jungkook has shared some great insights and tips, giving us a well-rounded look at everything. Now, let's talk about sterilization. We don't perform surgical procedures, but we do handle orthodontic instruments and sometimes even surgical tools. So, what kind of sterilization methods do you typically use? Most people use autoclaves.
I also use an autoclave, but I've got another sterilizer that works in just 6 minutes for handpieces. It looks like a computer desktop. The one that sterilizes in under 5 minutes, that's the one I use.
So, we usually think about high temperature and low temperature sterilization methods. But since orthodontic instruments are quite delicate, using an autoclave can be challenging. That's why we typically use either EO gas sterilizers or plasma sterilizers.
EO gas sterilization, though, is something you'll mostly see in large university hospitals.
That's true.
Managing EO gas sterilization isn't easy.
We actually set up this sterilizer when we first opened the clinic, but in reality, it's more commonly used in endodontics, periodontics, and prosthodontics rather than orthodontics. Since EO gas is now considered a hazardous gas, staff members don't really like it. It takes a long time to ventilate properly, so it's not used as frequently as before. That's why, in orthodontics, plasma sterilization is more common.
So you use plasma sterilization.
Honestly, I feel like many of you might know more about its technical principles than I do. I heard that plasma sterilization uses hydrogen peroxide in its process. Did you already know that?
I didn't know well.
So, technically, rather than calling it a plasma sterilizer, it's actually a hydrogen peroxide sterilizer.
And since it's a consumable-based system, you constantly need to purchase and replace the sterilization agents.
And it's expensive.
There are some maintenance costs involved, but for orthodontic pliers and similar instruments, I think using this kind of system is the best option.
After sterilization, it's recommended to store them in a UV sterilizer.
I'll try to show you my handpiece sterilizer sometime. It works using high temperature and high pressure. Some people say that pliers can get damaged when exposed to water, but in my 10 years of experience, I haven't really noticed any issues. Some people say that pin cutters get dull over time with sterilization, but we don't use pin cutters as much anymore since most cases have shifted to self-ligating brackets. So I do use a sterilizer for my instruments, and a lot of people ask me about it. How do you sterilize your tools? I'm not saying this is the only correct method, but most orthodontists seem to prefer using a dry heat sterilizer. Of course, plasma sterilization is great, but it does come with a higher cost and maintenance requirements.
If any of you are considering upgrading your sterilization system, this might be worth looking into. Now it's time for the next step. When a patient arrives, we move on to the consultation. Actually, I don't have any special tips for consultations, but it is just how other orthodontists approach them. Feel free to point out anything. We'll now show you a real consultation in action.
I'm curious to see it.
What concerns do you have about your teeth alignment?
I feel like my teeth are quite crowded, and my bite seems deep.
How about protrusion? Do you feel like your teeth are sticking out a lot?
I don't think they're too protruded.
So, you'd be okay with maintaining your current level of protrusion? No one really likes having protruding teeth. So, as long as it doesn't go in further, you're okay with it. Got it. Now, let me explain a bit more by showing you other patient cases. This patient had more severe crowding and a more pronounced protrusion compared to you.
Do you already have all these case examples prepared?
Yes, we've put together several video case studies like this to help patients visualize the process. Visual materials are really important in understanding treatment option. Your upper teeth are covering your lower teeth too much, so we're going to bring them back in. But when the bite is deep, they don't move back easily. We either need to intrude the upper teeth or extrude the lower teeth, but it doesn't seem like an extraction case. However, we do need to address the vertical issue, so you might need 2 orthodontic screws in the front area.
Do I have to get screws placed and wear other appliances?
I understand that it can sound a bit scary, but you've had local anesthesia before? It is like when you had your wisdom teeth removed. We apply a little bit of local anesthesia, and the whole process takes just 5 to 10 seconds. We turn it about 6 times, just like screwing in a small bolt, and it's done, not difficult at all.
You are so friendly and comforting.
I can't watch this.
You sound so reassuring. Even if you told me not to get braces, I'd probably still go for it. But you know, as soon as patients hear the word screw, they get really nervous and worried.
So the biggest challenge is how to explain it.
I always tell them it doesn't hurt, but no one believes me. But patients asked me how getting a screw placed in your gums could not hurt, so I felt so frustrated about this. Last year, I interviewed every single patient who had a screw placed and asked them how painful it was. I used a multiple-choice survey. About 95% of patients said they felt mild soreness for 2-3 days, but overall, it was much more tolerable than expected. Around 5%, about 5 out of 100 patients, said they experienced pain for up to a week. A small percentage of people do feel discomfort for longer, but for the vast majority, it's surprisingly not that painful. What do you think about that?
Well, I can't lie about it. The local anesthesia part can be a little uncomfortable and painful. I said you've had anesthesia before, like when getting a baby tooth removed. Then I try to explain the procedure as simply as possible, because honestly, it really is a very quick process. In most cases, you just count to 10, and it's done. Unless it's a special case, it usually takes about 10 seconds. When I explain it that way, patients don't feel completely at ease, but they seem to accept it.
You mean they start to think of it as a procedure that's not too painful?
And, more importantly, quick.
In reality, it doesn't take long at all.
All right, that wraps up our consultation part. I felt a bit embarrassed showing everything, but hopefully, you can see these as helpful tips. After the consultation, we move on to preparing for the diagnosis. We'll go over the technical details separately, but today, we proceed step by step by reviewing photos. Clear aligner treatment accounts for about half of all orthodontic treatments. As we continue with clear aligners, our staff has gotten more accustomed to the workflow. For diagnostic models, we are now using a model for scanning.
I think using a model scanning is great. Especially since you've been practicing for 20 years. You must have accumulated a lot of physical models. Storage of cast models is a huge issue, but for B models, I still prefer making traditional impressions.
Do you think they are necessary?
For me, if a retainer breaks or falls out, I don't want to go through the hassle of searching for the scan file and printing a new model. Instead, I just find the old B model and make a new retainer right away. It's much faster and more convenient that way.
But these days, I've even started doing B-model scanning as well. Then our manager goes over additional consultation details with the patient. After the brackets are bonded, we provide an explanation about fixed orthodontic appliances along with precautions. We also give patients a printed guide for TBI to ensure they understand how to care for their braces. I have something to tell you. You made the TBI-related YouTube video. I saw that our manager has been using it exactly as it is. So, I had to scold them a little. We should make our own version.
Thank you. I should buy them a coffee.
Everyone, you should check the video.
That video is actually one of the most viewed on my YouTube channel.
Now, let's talk about debonding, which happens at the end of treatment. After debonding, some patients have various concerns or requests. For example, they give some comments like, "I wish I had extracted a tooth." That's why, before debonding, we go over a detailed review of their entire orthodontic treatment up to this point. We also provide a debonding consent form, along with post-treatment care instructions.
These days, getting a consent form at the start of treatment is standard practice. But having a debonding consent form at the end is also quite useful. Some patients, after their braces are removed, may feel their mouth looks too recessed or too protruded after treatment and express dissatisfaction. We always address their concerns, but having everything documented helps avoid unnecessary disputes.
Since this is the end of treatment, the wording should not be overly strict. I recommend the wording should be a little reassuring. These are just some small, practical tips from our clinic.
Is that a business card?
Yes, it's something like a business card. Dr. G. De Kyung, Seoul May Orthodontic Clinic is written on it. If patients arrive on time for their appointments, I stamp their card with a seal that includes my last name.
What a great idea!
Each time they come on time,
They collect a stamp.
and once they've filled up the card,
They can redeem it for oral care products or a teeth whitening treatment. Patients must love this idea.
but ultimately, this is all about providing good patient care. Since orthodontic treatment lasts for a long time, we wanted to create a small moment of connection during each visit. Even if we only see them briefly, it would be nice to exchange a small smile. That's the thought behind this idea.
This is definitely a great tip.
I hope you find this useful and give it a try. Today's session on setting up an orthodontic clinic, honestly, at first, we wondered what kind of comments or insights we could really offer on this topic. But you've all been spending your lunch break studying every day. So this time, we wanted to share something lighter and more enjoyable for you to watch. How was it?
For me, I saw 20 years worth of experience and expertise from you, and I'm truly grateful. It's not easy to openly share these insights, so thank you so much for that.
As you know, I felt super embarrassed throughout this whole thing. In previous sessions, we covered parts 1 and 2 of our clear aligner series. Since then, with the launch of Magic Align, we've started and even completed several cases. Now, we're moving on to parts 3 and 4. Part 3 will focus on simple cases where you often encounter in private practices. Most of these cases are already completed, so we'll go through them together and review the outcomes. Today, we ate twisted donuts. I hope your day wasn't twisted like twisted donuts, but instead, sweet and enjoyable, just like the toppings on top. Wishing you all a great afternoon of successful treatments and a happy, fulfilling day ahead. Thank you.